Our story begins with a boy named Yotsuya, a high school student who is an introvert suffocated by all people and does not like to interact with anyone. Then he goes to school, sits in the classroom feeling extremely bored, wishing for the school day to end in any way. While he is there, he hears about a very beautiful girl who is talented in sports. Her name is Shindu. All the boys in the school were attracted to her, yet she always ignored them. At last the school day ends. Yotsuya returns home, sits to play computer games that he loves. This was the only thing that made him happy. Beside him, there was a picture of his friends who had parted from him, and whenever he looked at it, sadness returned to him once again. On the next day at school, he was responsible for cleaning the classroom. It was supposed that he would stand at the door after the end of the school day. Meanwhile, the girl named Shindu was speaking with another girl named Hakozaki. Yotsuya was very surprised because these two girls had never been friends before. In fact, quite the opposite. Shindu loved sports activities. The whole school knew her, whereas Hakozaki was an introverted girl, often absent from school. Suddenly, the two girls looked at him at the same time, which made him nervous, so he turned back to clean the blackboard. Then the teacher entered and said to him, "Why do you not participate in any sports activity? Why do you not care about your studies? You must become better than this." All the while, the two girls were still looking directly at Yotsuya with full attention. After the teacher left, Yotsuya was about to tell them that he was responsible for closing the classroom door that day. He wanted to ask them to leave, but when he looked at them, he was shocked and trembled because he discovered that they had not left through the door yet. Suddenly, he heard a strange sound inside the classroom. Everything around him began to change. His body transformed into a glowing spirit. Then he found himself suspended in the sky before falling down towards the earth, landing inside a lake of water. A group of snake-like monsters appeared in front of him, attacked him, so he could not understand what was happening. Therefore, he quickly rose, trying to escape from the lake. At that moment, he heard the voices of Hakozaki and Shindu calling out to him with great joy as they said to him, "At last you have arrived." When Yotsuya came out of the lake, he shouted in confusion, saying, "What is happening here? Where am I? What is this strange place?" Then Shindo answered him, "There is no time for these questions now. The important thing is that a stranger will appear behind you in a moment. You will see his head cut off, so do not be afraid. Just listen to him." Suddenly, he felt a presence behind him, and when he turned, he saw a man without a head. That man began to speak, saying, "I will explain the rules of the game. You are required to accomplish specific tasks. The current mission is to carry out the request of the village chief within 14 days. If the time ends without completing the task, then all of you will die. Moreover, the monsters that live in this world are waiting for you." Yotsuya stammered, saying, "I do not understand anything." But Shindo interrupted him with a light hit, replying, "Just read the instructions." Meanwhile, the headless man continued his words, explaining, "There are several missions ahead of you. Your two companions have already completed 2 of them. Now, it is your turn to complete the third. With each mission, a new member will join until you reach the final one. The maximum number allowed is 10 people. Each one of you will have a different role, like Shindo, who became the Wind Mage, and Hakozaki, who turned into a sword warrior. You too will know your role once you finish your mission." After that, the man turned the wheel of fortune, and the arrow stopped at the word farmer. Yotsuya was shocked because his role would start from 0 until he reached the rank of warrior. His clothes changed into the outfit of farmers, so he cried out in confusion, "What is going on here? I still do not understand anything." Shindu calmly replied, "Now you are a farmer. You cannot fight until you advance step by step, until you become a warrior." Yet he remained in great confusion, while the 3 of them stood together, staring at the unknown future awaiting them. Shindu began to explain, "I was the first one to arrive in this strange world. It is a magical world where we live as if inside a video game, and we must complete a set of missions exactly like in those games. I completed my first mission, which was to kill a small monster. Afterwards, Hakozaki arrived, and together we completed the second mission, which was to search for the people who live in this world. Now it is your turn to complete the third mission. As for the headless man you saw, he is called the Game Master. He asked me to befriend Hakozaki so that she would join me. Then he asked her to bring you into this with us. He is the one who gives you the missions and shows you how to recruit new members into our group." All this information made his mind freeze for a moment, as if he could not comprehend anything, but gradually he began to understand. He had nothing in his hands except a large axe, plus a small one, since his rank in the game was still farmer. That is why he did not have many weapons. Then they passed by a glowing circle. Shindu told him this was a point for recording events, so if he touched it, he would be able to see what had happened in this place before. Indeed, he stretched out his hand. Memories appeared showing Hakozaki when she first arrived in this world crying, not understanding understanding anything. Afterwards, Shindu welcomed her while she was extremely embarrassed, saying, "When I first came to this world, I was very terrified because I was alone. Yet after Hakozaki came, I began to feel a little safe, so I thanked God for that." Then Yotsuya said to them, "So all that is required of us is simply to complete missions so that we can return to our world. That seems very easy." However, suddenly monsters of the game appeared before them. Shindu said, "Every time you kill one of these monsters, you level up, your rank increases." So he drew the small axe he had, charged with all his strength, yet one of the monsters struck him with its club with ease, shattering his weapon instantly. Shindu looked at him saying, "It seems you will be of no use to us." So he quickly replied, "You are a mage, she is a warrior, kill them yourselves." Then she raised her magic staff, struck the monsters with wind magic, but what came out was only a weak breeze that had no effect at all. Shindu stepped back saying, "My level in this game is very low, this is all I can do." Meanwhile, Hakozaki was not in a better state, so it was required that he kill the monster himself. He tried to take her sword, but Shindu explained that only the owner can touch the weapon. Then he pulled out his large axe, hurled it at the monster, yet it shattered it with ease. Afterwards it struck him hard. He fell to the ground, looking at his body thinking he had already died. When he turned his eyes to Hakozaki, he saw her dying as well. Suddenly they both regained consciousness together. Shindu told him, "This game has no permanent death because this is not your real body. If you die, you return after 30 seconds, just like any other game." So he said, "Then let us hurry and kill this monster." Indeed, the girl lifted her staff, released dust that distracted their foe, while he rushed at it with his axe. The monster hit his head again. However, he still managed to drive his weapon into its body. Both of them fell to the ground, and in this way he killed his first monster in this world. Yotsuya returned after 30 seconds, asked, "What will happen if the three of us die together?" Shindao replied, "Any one of us who dies will return after half a minute, but if we all die, then we will not wake up. We will also die in our real world." So his heart trembled. He felt surrounded. At night they sat looking at the game map, found they were still at the beginning, so they agreed to go to the village to know its request, carry out the new mission. Shindu said to him, "If you complete the mission, you can ask the game master one question. He will be forced to answer. After my mission, I asked him, 'Why did you choose me?' He answered, 'Because someone you know asked me to do so.'" Meanwhile, Hakozaki asked, "Who are you?" He replied, "We are people from the future." Yotsuya smiled and said, "Fine, that is all right. I will begin my watch now." Then he stood guarding them. But suddenly, he heard a loud scream, so he rushed to the place and saw fire blazing and destruction everywhere. He found Hakozaki lying on the ground with her arm severed, when a huge monster appeared holding Shindu between its jaws, while she screamed, "Run quickly, Yotsuya, you cannot kill this monster." Afterwards, the monster devoured the girl before his eyes, and thus, Shindu died. So Yotsuya carried the body of Hakozaki and ran quickly. After a while, she returned to life, yet when she stood her arm had not returned. She said to him, "My arm will not come back unless we kill that monster or take it out from its belly." He replied in shock, "That means Shindu will not return unless we do the same." She answered, "Yes," so he told her, "Fine, we must try to complete the mission before facing the monster, so that we can raise our rank and increase our strength." Indeed, the two of them continued their path until they reached a nearby village, and the people welcomed them with joy. Then they went to the village chief to ask him about his request and the mission they must carry out. He said, "I want you to kill a huge monster that has appeared near the village." At that moment, they both froze in shock because the third mission required them to fight the same monster they were already running from. So, a wave of despair filled the air, but Hakozaki said with determination, "We must go and save Shindao," while Yotsuya shouted angrily, "How can you be a warrior and still be useless? Stay here in the village so you do not die. I will handle it alone." Yet she ran after him saying, "I want to help you." So he turned to her and said, "You cannot come, because if you die, we will all die." Then he went off to look for other monsters to kill, so he could raise his rank and grow stronger. Afterwards, he faced a group of them and defeated them, which increased his level. Then he looked at Hakozaki's status board and wished that he were the warrior instead of her. In that moment, he discovered that she had died, so he cried out, "How did this happen? I left her in the village so that she would not die, so what went wrong?" He rushed back to the village and found it burning, so he thought that their mission had failed. But when he checked their status board, he saw that Hakozaki had returned to life again. He was astonished, kept searching for the villagers, yet did not find anyone. Then he went to the circle of recorded memories, and a vision appeared showing Hakozaki speaking to a young boy, saying, In truth, I am sick with a serious illness that prevents me from making any effort so that I do not die. But here in your world, I do not feel the illness at all, and my strength even increases. So when I return to our world, I will invent medicine to cure my disease and the illnesses of everyone." Then she looked down with sadness and said, "I am not useful to anyone, but I try to help people and protect them as much as I can." Yotsuya felt deep sorrow after hearing the words of Hakozaki because he realized that he had wronged her. In the memories, he saw how the giant monster had attacked the village while the people fled in every direction. At that moment, the creature appeared behind him, so he started running quickly, knowing that if he died, they would all perish. He kept running until he found a small monster before him, leapt at it, and killed it to raise his rank and increase his strength. The instant his level rose, time froze and the monster stopped in place. Then the game master appeared before him saying, "Congratulations, you have advanced in rank and reached level 10, and now you have the right to change your profession." Afterwards, he spun the wheel of fortune, and Yotsuya wished to become a warrior, but the result was that he became a cook. He felt disappointment at first, then told himself, "At least I may find a knife among my weapons." Indeed, he found one, so his outfit changed into that of cook's. He held the knife, looked at the body of the monster, and was able to see its internal organs. This was one of the special features of the cook's profession, because it allowed him to determine the right places to strike. Then time returned to normal, so he rushed forward and stabbed the creature in the belly. It collapsed to the ground, but it did not die. In that moment, Shindu and Hakozaki returned to life, and the face of the first emerged from inside the monster. She looked at him with surprise and said, "I did not expect you to succeed in the mission, but what is this that you are wearing?" He answered with a sarcastic smile, "I have become a cook." Yet the monster was still not dead and prepared to attack them again. However, it was clearly exhausted because of the deep wound. So Yotsuya leapt upon it and tried to drive the knife once more into its body, but its solid hide stopped him from piercing it. Then the monster struck him and the two girls, and they all died. But they returned to life again, and he shouted, "Shindu, use your wind magic." Then he charged foolishly at the enemy, drove his knife into its wound, and tried to stab again. But the monster seized him and hurled him far away. So Shindo climbed onto its back and unleashed from her staff a mighty wind that pierced through its head. At last it fell to the ground, and the mission was finally completed with success. The game master appeared again behind Yotsuya and said to him, "Now you may ask me your question." The young man was astonished, but he had already prepared it. He said, "What will happen to us after we complete our missions?" The master answered him and showed him a vision of his city in the future, destroyed while monsters spread throughout its streets. After that, they saw a massive and dangerous monster, and suddenly everyone returned to their natural world. So Hakozaki was shocked and said, "Are we supposed to fight that monster?" But Shindu answered, "I am not sure. It does not matter now. Let us live our normal lives for a while and prepare to return to the game again." Then Yotsuya asked them, "What will happen if we remain in our world?" And Shindu replied, "We will all die." So they looked at the clock and discovered that time was frozen because they had returned to the exact moment they were transported. They understood that time inside the game was completely different from their own time, and that in their world, they were as if fixed without moving. After that, Shindu asked Yotsuya to take Hakozaki home because she was exhausted and could not walk alone. While he was accompanying her, he looked at the city and said to himself, "I hate these people, but it seems that my main mission is to save this city from destruction, and what awaits me is nothing but fire." At night, he continued his training and began to study the streets of the city carefully. Suddenly, the game master contacted him saying, "Listen to the instructions, for this is your new mission. Now you must recruit another girl into your group, and she is in the girls' school." Indeed, he went there, and while speaking with the game master, he saw a group of girls bullying a weak one, surrounding her. So he intervened quickly and saved her from them. After they walked away, he asked her, "What is your name and why were they bullying you?" She answered, "My name is Yuka. They do that because I make videos on YouTube, and they are jealous, wanting to imitate me." Shortly afterward, Yotsuya found himself transported once again into the magical world, entered the game, and this time Yuka was with them. She looked completely astonished at the place just as he had before. Then the game master appeared to her as well, gave her the instructions, and afterwards he spun the wheel of fortune. Her profession appeared, Fire Mage. Then the master said to them all, "This time, if you die, you will return to life after 40 seconds, not 30 as before, and your new mission is to deliver the goods to a city called Radio City within 40 days. Then he disappeared saying, "See you again." The youths prepared to carry out their fourth mission when suddenly a gigantic insect appeared, and from its body more worm-like creatures emerged. Then it began to hurl living spheres at them, one of which struck Yotsuya, so he fell dead. Yuka tried to use her fire magic, but her power was far too weak because her rank was still low. So another insect attacked her and killed her as well, leaving only Shindu and Hakozaki alive as they were were hiding. After 40 seconds, everyone returned to life, and Yotsuya drew his knife, managed to block the incoming spheres, which left the girls astonished as they wondered how his strength had increased so quickly. The giant insect lunged at him, so he leapt onto it and climbed up to its back. Then he drew his knife and cut off one of its legs. Afterwards, he grabbed Hakozaki's hand with her weapon and charged together at the monster to help her deliver the blow. Indeed, they struck it with a fatal hit, and thus the rank of all of them rose. That night, while the others were asleep, Shindu woke up and saw Yotsuya training alone. So she sat beside him, held his hand, saying, "I am not as strong as you think. I am very weak, and I need you so that we can finish this game and return to our world." He was deeply moved by her words, and promised her that he would never leave her, that he would stay by her side until the very end. On the next day, they went to a village that had been destroyed by monsters, but they found no one there, and they did not know how they would continue their path to Radio City, or what the goods were that they were supposed to deliver. Then suddenly a man appeared riding a strangely shaped horse, so they asked him about the location of the city. He told them it was very far away at the edge of the kingdom, and that reaching it would take at least 35 days, and they were all astonished. Afterwards, he continued saying, "If you walk on your feet, you will not arrive before a full year passes, so you must use horses." At that moment, Shindu asked him to give them his horse, but he apologized, saying he needed it himself. Then he added, "If you want horses, there is a combat tournament being held right now in the neighboring city, and whoever wins will receive 3 horses." So their hearts filled with excitement, and they decided to enter that tournament. On their way, a group of bandits appeared before them, and one of them said, "These look like a party of heroes. If we capture them, we will gain a huge ransom." Then one thug charged forward, but Yotsuya blocked his strike with ease. Suddenly, the game master appeared briefly before him and said, "Your rank has dropped because attacking humans is forbidden." So the boy was shocked and did not know how to act, and they all decided to run quickly so that the criminals would not capture them. Yet in the end, the bandits managed to seize Shindo, while Yuka took Hakozaki and tried to escape with her to save her. Meanwhile, Yotsuya stayed behind fighting small monsters so that he could raise his rank. During his battle, the game master appeared again and spun the wheel of fortune, so his profession changed into a mage. He discovered that he now had healing magic, and also a strange ability that allowed him to persuade anyone easily. Afterwards, he went to the combat tournament to participate in it, aiming to win the horses, but by bad luck he lost in the first round and was killed immediately. At that time, a girl named Kahabel appeared who was the daughter of the city's king, and he pleaded with her saying, "Please, I am in desperate need of the horses in your city." She answered that she would agree, but on one condition, that he would help her to kill the many monsters that were threatening their region. She then took him to the city commander, who agreed to give them only one horse. Yet with that single horse, Yotsuya and Kahabel managed to reach the place of the girls and save them. When they saw him, he told them that he had secured only one horse. But suddenly, Kahabel appeared and said, "I will provide you with more horses, but on one condition, that you allow me to join your group and teach you the art of sword fighting. For I can kill you all as I wish, since you always return to life again. And in this way, I will enjoy myself and train without losing anything." Her words left them all in shock, and her thoughts seemed strange, but she joined them nonetheless. Thus, their journey began anew, and along the road they faced small monsters that they defeated easily. Then they continued forward until they looked at the map and found that the remaining time before the mission ended was exactly 15 days and 5 hours. Suddenly, they found a group of wolf-like monsters attacking people on the road, so Hakozaki rushed forward and said, "I must save them. I will not let them die while I stand here." Yet Yotsuya stopped her and said, "Can you even do anything? And besides, if we interfere, we will be delayed in our mission." But she answered with determination, "I am ready to sacrifice my life to save any human." When he heard her words, he was moved, so he leapt down as well, saying, "I am with you." Together they attacked the beasts. However, one of them struck her and bit her neck, while another knocked the weapon from Yotsuya's hand and threw him aside. At that moment, he tried to use his magical persuasion to make the monster turn around, yet it kept attacking without listening. So he lunged and stabbed its eye and almost killed it, but a third surprised him and slew him, forcing him to wait 40 seconds before returning. Meanwhile, the soldiers of the caravan fought the monsters and managed to kill one. When Hakozaki's time ended, she revived, and Yotsuya saw her advancing toward one of the creatures. He noticed that it too was preparing to leap at her, yet she stood firm and struck her weapon with incredible speed as she shouted, "How long will I remain weak? How long will everyone keep saving me? I will not be weak any longer." The beast rushed at her, but at the final moment she drew her sword, drove it into the creature, and slew it. Immediately afterwards, Yotsuya's 40 seconds ended, and he revived as well. In that moment, the last monster attacked him, seeking to kill him, but he ran toward the carriage of his companions. Just before it reached him, Kahabel appeared from behind and cut off the wolf's head with a single strike, and thus at last everyone survived. After that, Yotsuya began using his healing magic to treat the injured in the caravan. Then their commander appeared cheered and thanked them for what they had done, and he asked, "Where are you heading?" One of the soldiers replied, "We are bound for Radio City to deliver these two men along with the child who accompanies them, because an order has been given for their execution there since they disobeyed the king and refused his commands." Here the companions began to wonder, are these three the goods that the game master commanded us to deliver, or is it merely a trap to test us? They realized they stood before two choices only, either to save the innocent from death or to complete the mission as given. At that moment Kahabel spoke sharply, saying, "This king is a tyrant who wants to kill innocent people simply because they defied his orders. And worse, he does not even wish to execute them in their own city, but in another to terrify its people, strengthen his reputation, and impose his rule upon all the cities he plans to conquer. I will never allow such a thing to happen." The caravan leader answered coldly, "I know you well, Kahabel. You are the captain of knights in a small city with no value, and if you oppose the king, he will destroy your city entirely." The two prepared to clash, but Shindu intervened at the last moment and stopped the fight. Then Yotsuya gathered the girls and said to them, "It is possible that the goods we must deliver to Radio City are these very people. In my opinion, we should escort them there. So if the mission is completed, then it is finished, but if it is not counted, then we will save them and protect them ourselves, and afterwards, search for the true mission." At that moment, the commander's aide said, "It would have been better if they had not joined us." Yet the commander replied, "Do not worry, we are bound to deliver the prisoners to Radio City, and as for the heroes, I have prepared a great surprise for them." The caravan continued its march, and when it stopped for rest, Yotsuya asked the commander to let him speak with the priest. Indeed, he sat with him and asked, "Who are you, and why are you here?" The priest answered, "We are a group of people who embraced a new faith, and that angered the king. So he killed many of us, tortured them, burned our homes, and he decided to execute us in Radio City, along with this child, so that we would be a lesson to the rest. I do not want anything from this world, except that this little one survives the execution." Yotsuya was deeply moved by his words, and understood clearly what was happening. When he gathered again with the others, he asked the commander directly, "Why do you want to kill these people?" He replied, "Our king is kind-hearted. He wants to unite all the cities under his rule, so that he may spread goodness, peace, and justice. That is why I obey his orders." At that moment, Yotsuya thought to himself, each side has its reasoning and believes that what it does is right. Each is convinced of its view, yet we do not know where these events will lead us. Suddenly, Yuka interrupted the discussion and said to the commander, "Do you really think we will believe such foolish words? Any king who tries to conquer cities claims that he is spreading justice and goodness, while in truth he is nothing but a tyrant chasing his own goals, and the simplest proof is what he did to you." The commander grew angry when he heard her and said, "I will not allow you to say such things, and I will not allow you to speak of our king with such insolence." So Yotsuya and Shindu hurried to calm the situation, and they managed to end the argument, preventing any further talk on that subject. After that, Kahabel began training with the sword, and she explained to Shindu how to use her weapon to defend herself. At that time, Hakozaki said to Yotsuya, "We still have 13 days and 12 hours left, yet we have not discovered what the goods are that we must deliver, and we have not even reached Radio City." Then they continued on their path until they reached a massive mountain. The commander of the soldiers said, "We must pass through the middle of this mountain, yet I know of a shortcut, and if we take it we will arrive much faster." So they moved through the mountain passages, and while they were walking, one of Kahabel's aides helped the boy push the cart. He said to him, "I am very happy to be with you on this journey. It is a great honor to stand beside you, hero." Yotsuya replied, "You are truly a kind person." Then they continued on their path until they reached the foot of the mountain and then entered a dark cave. The commander said, "This cave contains metallic machines that we must use to open the path." The place was a massive hall, and after activating the machines, water burst forth and the gears began to turn until a stone path was revealed before them. Yet suddenly, the cave door closed on them, and the commander of the caravan appeared from afar saying, "This is the end of your journey. We cannot travel with people who betray our king. Try to save yourselves if you can, though I doubt you are capable of it. Farewell." Everyone was shocked because the time limit of the mission was drawing near, and if they failed, they would all die. Yotsuya was the most terrified, and he did not know what to do. Then Kahabel stood on the stone path and said, "Let us begin moving. We must try to escape from here." So they moved the cart carefully, yet they faced a passage blocked by giant hammers that swung endlessly, making it impossible to cross. At that moment, Yotsuya understood the nature of the game, so he climbed to a high spot and found a set of stones engraved with symbols. He chose one and shifted its direction, so the movement of the hammers slowed little by little until they stopped completely. Afterwards, they managed to cross the passage slowly with their cart. Afraid of slipping, Yuka was terrified, but they continued walking until they reached another passage. Yotsuya said, "This road looks easy. We should simply walk straight right through. But as soon as he stepped forward, a mechanism struck him. He fell from a height and died instantly. Then he revived after 40 seconds saying, I should have been more careful. This is certainly not so simple. Then Hakozaki said, I have an idea to help us cross this place. And she took out a sheet of paper and a pen and began calculating the interval between each strike of the walls. They truly managed to calculate the exact timing, so Shindo advanced into the passage and succeeded in crossing. One after another the others followed until they all reached the other side. She said to them, let us continue the mission quickly. But as for you, Yotsuya, try to get out of here as soon as possible. The boy began climbing and struggling to escape, but he failed repeatedly. Meanwhile, the girls reached a massive gate, and when they opened it, they found a swarm of small monsters waiting. They also saw a colossal statue fixed against the wall, but to their shock, the statue moved, descended to the ground, and stared at them with glowing eyes before charging to destroy them. Meanwhile, Yotsuya was still attempting to escape until he finally succeeded, yet he was burning with anger, saying, I will kill the one who trapped us here. He continued walking through the dark tunnels, unable to see anything around him, until he found a memory circle. When he touched it, visions surged before his eyes, and he saw the girls crying with the body of Kahabel's aide lying before them. He recalled his moments with him, grieved deeply, saying, I will not let your sacrifice go to waste. I will avenge you. Then he pressed on into the depths of the cave. As for the girls, the monsters poured over them, so they fought back, but their numbers were overwhelming, and the colossal mechanical statue advanced toward them. So Kahabel and Shindu rushed forward until they reached a circle in the middle of the corridor where a chain hung with a key. The first said, we must take that key to open the gate and cross to the other side. Then she attacked the statue with courage, while Shindu battled the bats and struck them down to the ground. But suddenly, the giant monster drove its claws into Kahabel's body and hurled her into the waters below the passage, and she vanished beneath the surface, leaving Shindao stunned, unable to believe she had died. The statue turned toward her slowly, so she retreated in terror, realizing she could never withstand it. As she backed away, she stumbled over a fallen bat and fell to her death, and the statue prepared to finish her. But suddenly, time stopped and everything froze around her. Even the monster itself remained motionless. In that instant, she remembered Yotsuya's words when he told her, when you reach rank 10, time will stop, and the game master will appear before you to change your profession. Indeed, she had reached the required level after killing that bat by chance, so the game master appeared and spun the wheel of fate. In those frozen moments, she recalled his advice once again. If time stops, then use those precious seconds to strike the monster before it moves again. Indeed, Shindo hurled herself at the monster, and when time began to flow once more, she had transformed into a warrior, holding both sword and shield. So she charged at it and struck with all her strength, but its iron-like ribs prevented her from reaching its heart. The beast countered with deadly claws, yet she saved herself quickly as she raised her shield and gripped her blade. Then she looked at its body and noticed a wound, and at that moment she remembered Kahabel's words when she had taught her that to kill a monster she must strike at precise points. So she marked the place of the heart and rushed toward it with full speed, trying to plunge her sword within, but the monster surprised her and severed her arms. Even so, she did not retreat. Instead, she leapt onto its back, grasped the weapon with her severed hands, then drove it deep into the heart, and its body convulsed before finally collapsing lifeless. At that very moment, Yotsuya arrived running to catch up, and he saw the beast fall to the ground. Shindu smiled faintly and said, you are far too late. I defeated it alone. Then her smile faded as she added with sorrow, but Kahabel was killed. The boy dashed forward and leapt into the water where he found her body bleeding, so he saved her and used his healing magic until she regained consciousness. When her eyes opened, she could hardly believe she was still alive. Her aide said to her, it was Yotsuya who pulled you from the water and healed your wounds, though he exhausted himself so greatly that he fainted. She looked at him with eyes filled with gratitude and whispered, thank you for saving me, while in her gaze flickered a hidden spark of admiration and love. Soon after, the rest of the girls arrived and saw her looking at him in such a way, and they were astonished. That night, Hakozaki said to Yuka, we have only 7 days and a few hours left, yet we still do not know when Yotsuya will awaken. But suddenly he opened his eyes and said, I have understood everything. They all stared in surprise and asked, what do you mean? He answered, I now realize what the true cargo is that we must deliver. The game master never specified anything in particular for our mission, so any cargo we bring to the city of Radio will be counted as success, which means those condemned to execution are the cargo we must rescue and deliver. Then he continued, but to achieve this quickly, we must divide into 2 groups. I will go with Yuka to save those people, while you, Shindo, with Hakozaki, must search for any merchant bound for the city carrying goods and help him deliver them. So in this way, we secure the mission's completion. At that moment, Kahabel looked at him and asked, what will my role be? He replied, replied, "You are the one who will carry out the final vengeance, for I have a perfect plan by which we will defeat the commander and rescue the innocent." Shindu and Hakozaki moved with Kahabel's aid to search for a merchant carrying goods they could deliver, while Yotsuya sat explaining his plan to Kahabel and Yuka, saying, "I want the commander of the soldiers to send a message to the king telling him the mission has failed without you being involved, so that your city will not be attacked." Kahabel understood the plan and said, "Agreed." On the next day they managed to find the commander, so they observed him from afar. At night he was standing, speaking with his men, urging them to complete the mission, but suddenly, Yotsuya surprised them and stood before him. The commander was shocked and said, "How did you escape from the cave? I was certain you died there." The soldiers prepared to attack him, but he raised his hand and said, "Let us calm down. I did not come to fight. I came to negotiate. You know well you will gain nothing if you fight me, for even if you kill me I will return after 40 seconds, and in the end, I will still destroy you." So the commander asked, "Then why have you come now?" He answered, "Kahabel and her aides died in the cave. 2 of the heroes who were with me fell into a pit and could not escape, and only I remain along with this weak girl." Then he called Yuka and she appeared from behind him. He said, "You have until sunrise. If you do not hand over the 3 prisoners, then I will use the magic of heroes, and I will kill you all." Then he left with Yuka, leaving the soldiers in confusion. The commander stood stunned, speaking with his men, trying to find a solution. He said, "We must kill him quickly so we can complete our mission." But one of the soldiers answered, "How, sir? He is one of the heroes. No matter how many times we kill him, he will return again." So the commander said, "Then there is only one solution. We must capture him and imprison him until his mission fails." Suddenly they heard Yuka's voice as she entered saying, "Greetings to you." So they turned to her in astonishment and said, "Who are you? How did you get here?" She replied, "Lower your voices. I came without Yotsuya's knowledge, and I wish to offer you a deal that will end this problem." The commander was shocked and asked, "What do you want?" She answered, "I am ready to take you now to the place where he sleeps so you can capture him with ease." The commander asked suspiciously, "Why would you do such a thing? Do you intend to lead us into a trap?" But she answered, "I do not care about Yotsuya or anyone else. I only wish to avoid trouble with anyone, and that is why I want to get rid of him." The commander was convinced and said, "I will go with you." Then he turned to one of his soldiers and ordered him to stay behind to guard the captives while he and the rest prepared to follow her. Yuka smiled with cunning, saying in herself, "Your plan is proceeding perfectly, Yotsuya." Indeed, Yuka's mission was to distract the commander and his men so that Yotsuya could rescue the captives. Whenever they asked her on the road, "When will we arrive?" she would answer, "Soon," until the commander grew impatient and shoved her aside. Then he ordered one of his soldiers to kill her quickly with the sword and said, "Let us return now. It is clear this was a trap." They tied her with a rope so that she would not escape after returning to life, and afterwards they went back to the place of the captives. But the commander stood shocked by what he saw, for one of his soldiers said, "Your mission has failed, Commander. I killed the 3 captives, and here are their corpses before you. I even set them ablaze as you see." Then he ignited the fire in the place, and the soldiers began looting and burning. The commander shouted at him saying, "Are you insane? How could you burn them while they were still alive?" In that moment Yuka seized the chaos, so she released fire magic and cut the rope that bound her. Then she leapt quickly and fled, hurrying until she reached Yotsuya and jumped behind him on the horse. Together they galloped away while the soldiers chased them foolishly, and had they examined the burning corpses, they would have discovered the truth. Here the secret was revealed, for Yotsuya had already rescued the 3 captives after capturing the soldier, binding him, and covering his face. Then he crafted dolls from straw and dressed them in the prisoners' clothes so it seemed as though he had killed them, and he lit the fire in the place to complete the deception. Afterward he said to his companions, "Now the commander will send a message to the king telling him that Kahabel and her aides are dead, and that the heroes ruined the mission, and this way her city will not face any danger." They continued until they reached a cave in the mountains where they hid the 3 captives, and the child had already recovered and regained his strength. Then Yotsuya turned to Yuka and said, "If Kahabel succeeds in her mission, then my plan will be perfectly complete." But the girl looked at him and said, "Even if we are in a game in a strange world, how could you burn a man alive?" He answered, "This is only a game world. They are not real humans. Either I burn them or I lose my life and the lives of my companions." Meanwhile, Shindu and Hakozaki with the aide sat together in deep despair. So Hakozaki said anxiously, "We only have 3 days left and we still have not found any merchant. It seems the time for the mission will end. Does that mean we will die?" At the same time, the commander of the soldiers was drowning in sorrow to the point that he wept, for he felt that his mission had failed and that the king would never trust him again. So he sent him a message telling him everything that had happened while he trembled in fear, asking himself, "What will the king do to us when we return?" Yet the surprise was that one of his soldiers was suddenly killed, and Kahabel appeared saying to him, "Do not fear the punishment of your king, because you will not return to him at all." The commander looked at her in disbelief, but she continued fiercely saying, "Take up your weapon, for I do not like to prey upon the weak." He gripped his sword and lunged at her with all his might, but she deflected his strike with skill, then cut off his hands, afterwards his legs, so he collapsed screaming in agony. She ended him by cutting his neck, saying, "Thus I have avenged my aid." Meanwhile, in the royal palace, the king had already learned what had occurred, so he said to one of his men, "These heroes, though they do not kill humans, still they interfered and ruined our mission. Therefore I want you to find any means to kill them and take vengeance upon them." The soldier replied, "I shall carry out all you command," and it was clear he was not joking. During that time, Yotsuya said to Yuka, "I want to take with me 3 things because perhaps they are the cargo we must deliver to the city of radio." So he placed 3 small boxes in the carriage. She looked at him with fear and said, "Are you certain of this? These boxes contain very strange things." But he answered, "Perhaps they are indeed what is required." Then they set off to meet Shindu and the others. On the road, Kahabel kept looking at Yotsuya while he was speaking with the little boy, and it was obvious that she admired him. Meanwhile, Yuka noticed this and cast a sly glance, realizing that it resembled the beginning of a love story. When they stopped to rest, Kahabel drew near to Yotsuya trying to confess her feelings. She said hesitantly, "I want to tell you something important." But Yuka was hiding behind the horse, eager to hear. Yet Kahabel blushed at the last moment and said nothing. So they continued on as if nothing had happened. Yuka smiled, enjoying the romantic atmosphere, and afterwards she began to act strangely in order to catch his attention. Even the little boy looked at her puzzled and asked, "Why is this girl behaving like that?" Yotsuya replied with a laugh, "Do not worry about it. Her mind is a little unusual." Yuka kept scheming along the way, trying to push Kahabel to confess her feelings, but she failed every time, to the point that she even asked her to help Yotsuya with the cooking so they could talk together. Yet the result turned out opposite to what she expected, for when she looked up she found Kahabel walking toward them carrying a huge wild boar in her hands. She said, "I hunted this so we can eat it, and this is my way of helping Yotsuya in the cooking." At that moment, Yuka gasped and said to herself, "How strange this girl is." Yuka began to think of a new plan to help Kahabel confess her feelings, so she asked Yotsuya to train with her in sword fighting, saying to herself, "She loves training, and surely if they train together, she will be moved and admit what is in her heart." Yet the situation turned out differently, for the training ended with Kahabel throwing the boy to the ground and saying to him, "Your turn is over. Now it is your turn, my dear." Then she began chasing Yuka, who ran away screaming, and it became one of the funniest moments they had ever experienced. On the other side, Shindu and Hakozaki had found a merchant heading to the city of radio with goods to deliver, so they rode with him to secure their path. They brought the prisoners to the church, considering it a safe place where no one could harm them. But the surprise was that they were not the required cargo. Afterwards, they tried the second possibility, which was the weapons and swords of the soldiers, but those too were not counted. Therefore, the last possibility remained: what lay inside the 3 boxes, the severed heads of the commander and his soldiers. Although it was a strange thing, this time it was accepted as the true cargo, and thus the mission was completed. At that moment, Shindu and Hakozaki were still walking with the merchant on the road to the city of radio, but they were surprised to see the mission notification, so everyone gathered once again preparing for the next stage. Their new mission was to spread out in the city and expand the map they held in their hands, the map of the game, to uncover many places they had never seen before. Then the 4 of them began to compete to cover as much ground as possible. Yet Yotsuya stopped at a place overlooking the sea where the sun was setting, and Kahabel had finally decided to confess her feelings. She stood by his side and whispered, "I want to tell you something," but she held back when she saw him preparing to leave. She asked him, "Are you leaving now?" He answered, "I must go to continue my new mission." At that moment she changed her mind and extended her hand to him. So he smiled and shook it, saying, "I am very happy to have met you, and I hope to see you again." Then he turned and walked away. The girl remained standing, watching him from afar, her eyes filled with emotions she could not dare to reveal, and it was clear that she had fallen deeply in love with him. At that time, Yotsuya and the girls began to spread throughout the city to carry out their mission, yet the snow fell heavily and the sky turned into a freezing storm that covered everything. The boy changed his clothes to shield himself from the cold and forced his way through the icy winds, but the task was unbearably hard, for the cold was merciless. Their bodies had never known such weather, and they soon looked as though they were surrendering to death itself. Hakozaki collapsed halfway, gasping and crying as she said, "I do not want to die. My limbs are frozen and I can no longer move." She sat on the ground defeated while Shindu tried to keep walking, yet she too stumbled and lost her strength, the snow covering her little by little. They all seemed on the edge of death beneath that deadly storm. Meanwhile, Yotsuya pressed on with difficulty through the blizzard, murmuring, "There are only 6 hours left until the mission ends. I must reach the target or we will all fail." Suddenly, a giant monster blocked his path and struck him with a mighty blow that hurled him to the ground. Then it tried to crush him again, but he slipped quickly between its legs and ran aside before standing once more to face it. The beast lunged at him fiercely, yet the boy raised his shield and stopped the strike, then rushed forward with his small knife and stabbed it into the creature's body until it fell dead. The moment it died, smaller monsters emerged around it and began to wail for their mother. Yotsuya froze in shock and whispered to himself with sorrow, I never wanted to kill her, but I had to if I wanted to live. Still, this is only a game, only artificial intelligence and nothing more. Afterwards, he turned to his map and saw that only 5 hours remained to complete the mission. He kept moving despite exhaustion, yet suddenly the ground beneath him gave way and he fell from a great height to his death. At the same time, Shindo and Hakozaki had surrendered to the piercing cold, their bodies frozen until life left them. It seemed the end was closing in on them all. In those moments, Yuka was hiding, trying to warm herself, and she surrendered to her old memories. She saw in her mind the days at school with her friends and all the shows she used to watch when she was young. Then she whispered to herself, why am I even here? I could die at any moment, but I must keep moving forward. Because Yuka was still alive, Yotsuya revived after 40 seconds and felt shocked that he was still breathing. So he realized that one of the girls had not died yet. He found himself in a strange underground place where the cold was not strong, so his body heat remained. He looked around and saw corridors with strange symbols drawn across them. Then he walked until he reached a great hall with a glowing phosphorescent circle in its center, and he stood there watching in silence. As for Shindu, she too returned to life after her time passed, but Hakozaki remained frozen under the snow and could not come back. Shindu moved forward and from a distance saw a village with lights glowing in its houses. Her heart filled with joy as she said, finally I will find something there that can help me. She ran toward it without noticing that the ground beneath her was only a frozen lake, its ice thin and weak. It broke beneath her steps and she fell into the icy waters, drowning without the chance to rise again after 40 seconds, for her body froze completely. Now only Yotsuya and Yuka were left. They tried to continue filling the map, yet every path the boy took was blocked. He entered a very narrow tunnel, and when he came out he found another wall waiting. Suddenly, the earth shook and a giant worm burst from the ground, carving a new path. He followed it thinking, surely this worm will lead me out if I keep chasing it. But his bad luck struck when it turned back and attacked, swallowing him whole and killing him instantly. Thus only Yuka remained alive, and she whispered to herself, if I die now, then everything will end. She tried to encourage herself and resist despair, but her strength collapsed and she fell to the ground, smiling bitterly as she said, finally I have found my excuse to give up. It seems I will die. I have always been a failure, and I will never be able to finish this mission alone. While Yuka was on the verge of surrender and death, she imagined before her one of the little witches from the anime she used to watch in her childhood, and she heard her say, you have always been a hero like us, so how can you give in to death and abandon your mission? We heroes never surrender, and you always watched us as we fought evil in all its forms, so now you must be like us. Yuka was so moved by these words that she burst into tears. Then she gripped her staff tightly and shouted with all her strength, I am not a failure, I must complete the mission. She regained her determination and continued walking through the storm, although the cold was draining her body. Yet before her eyes she kept seeing the anime characters she loved as if they were cheering her on. Still, her legs gave out and she stopped exhausted in the middle of the path, only to see a giant cat ridden by a mysterious girl. The girl said to her, you are one of the heroes, are you not? Come with me if you want to finish your mission. At first Yuka thought she was imagining it, but she soon realized the girl was real, so she climbed onto the massive cat and it dashed forward with great speed toward their destination. Yet, despair still crept into Yuka's heart, and she whispered to herself, it is impossible to reach the target in time. Everything is over. Tears streamed down her face as she thought the mission would surely fail, but the girl turned to her with confidence and said, do not worry, we will make it. Then she lifted her weapon and chanted a spell, unleashing a surge of magic that made the cat soar through the air at a blinding speed. Yuka stared in amazement and asked, are you one of the heroes too? The girl answered, no, I am just someone who knows how to use magic. Yuka glanced at the mission card and saw the time almost running out, but the girl invoked another burst of magic that drove the cat even faster. Suddenly, the sea appeared ahead of them, the very place required to complete the mission. Yet it was still too far, and the counter was close to 0. Yuka closed her eyes, convinced failure was now certain, but suddenly she opened them and found herself with everyone in the familiar place where the game master always appeared. The heroes stood in shock, unable to believe Yuka had completed the mission on her own. At that moment the game master appeared behind her, and she recoiled in fear, saying, enough of this terror you inflict upon us. He smiled and said, you have completed your mission, and now you may ask me one question and I will answer you with truth. She hesitated for a moment, then said, there is only one thing I want to know. Is this strange world real or just a game? Everyone gasped in disbelief, for they had been convinced it was only a game. But the game master replied, you are now in a parallel world to your own, a world much like Earth. Yes, this is a real world, and the creatures you fight are real as well. The only thing that is not real here is you. At that moment, Yuka turned to Yotsuya, her eyes brimming with tears, for she realized what he had done was not inside a game as he believed, but in a real world. As for him, he stood frozen, unable to accept what he had heard, crushed by the sorrow of knowing that he had killed a living being and even burned a man alive, thinking all along it was nothing more than an illusion. Afterwards, the heroes returned once more to their real world, and Yotsuya sat alone in his room, drowning in sorrow, unable to believe what had happened or grasp everything he had gone through. He could not accept that he had killed a real human being. Although he had always hated people and avoided them, he never imagined that his hatred would drive him to kill. He felt despair and shame, then lay on his bed whispering to himself, "It is true that I dislike people and avoid them, but I never thought I would actually kill one of them." He sank deeper into regret and grief. As the days passed, he began joining sports activities at school, something he had never done before, and he showed surprising skill and agility that astonished his classmates, who wondered how he had improved so quickly. He was not the only one who changed, for Hakozaki also began joining sports with Shindo after her health improved slightly. She felt great joy, as if her body was getting stronger thanks to that strange world. She told her friend, "It seems that every time we join the game and return, our bodies grow stronger, and our health improves. Even my condition is getting better despite my serious illness." Yet Shindo kept watching Yotsuya from afar, noticing that he was still burdened by grief, avoiding everyone and not speaking to her or to Hakozaki, as if isolation had overtaken him once again. While he was on his way home one evening, his phone suddenly vibrated. When he opened it, he froze in shock, for it was a message from the game master. The words were simple but terrifying. "What do you feel now after killing a real human?" Anger rushed through him, so he deleted the message instantly, then kept walking, trying to convince himself that perhaps everything had only been a game. Still, the pain in his heart would not fade, and he decided to live a normal life and forget that magical world, refusing to return ever again. But the unexpected happened when a strange girl appeared before him out of nowhere and said, "How are you, Yotsuya?" He stumbled back and asked in shock, "Who are you, and why are you here?" She answered, "You should have replied to my message. Why did you delete it?" At that moment he realized she was the game master herself standing in their world, and he asked in disbelief, "Are you truly the game master? How did you come to our world, and how did you turn into a young girl?" She replied coldly, "You have no right to ask me anything." They sat together and she said, "Answer the question you ignored. What do you feel now after what you have done?" He lowered his head and answered with honesty, "I feel deep regret. I know what I did was a grave mistake, but I believed I was fighting a character in a game, and I only did it because I wanted to save an entire city from destruction and war." She listened in silence, then said, "Forget this matter for now, but do not think you can abandon the game, for you cannot escape. You must continue every mission, or else you will all die in your real world." Then she added, "It is time I tell you about the new person who will join you." He asked with worry, "Who is it?" She smiled faintly and said, "You will know everything in due time." Then she handed him a cap and ordered, "Wear it now." He stared at her in shock, feeling the weight of danger pressing down on him more than ever. In another part of the city, right in front of a Chinese restaurant, a gang of masked thieves and thugs were gathering, with their leader standing tall and ordering them to prepare for their mission. Inside the restaurant, Yotsuya sat with the game master, tense and uneasy. So he asked her, "Why did you bring me here?" The girl who embodied the game master smiled and answered, "The man you see before you is a well-known drug dealer, and the new player I want you to recruit into your group will enter now. Your task will be to prevent what is about to happen. Be ready. They will enter in 3, 2, 1. At that exact moment, the restaurant door burst open, and the thugs rushed inside charging at the drug dealer. But Yotsuya stretched his leg and tripped one of them to the ground, then shouted at the rest, "What you are doing is a terrible mistake." One of them struck him on the leg with a club, thinking he could overpower him. Yet Yotsuya's anger flared, so he grabbed them one by one, smashing through their ranks until none of them could stand against him. During the fight, he heard someone calling out the name Shuja, and instantly realized that he was facing the very target the game master had mentioned. The boy attacked again, but Yotsuya blocked him with ease, ripped the mask from his face, and declared firmly, "Take your brother and leave right now before the police arrive and arrest you." Yet Keita refused and shouted, "I will not leave until I finish this drug dealer." Yotsuya roared, "Stop it. What you are doing is wrong. Run away before you destroy yourself." At that very moment, the gang leader, enraged by the failure of his plan, stormed into the restaurant and bellowed, "Stop at once." He turned sharply toward Yotsuya and demanded, "Who are you, you brat? Who sent you? Are you working with the rival gang?" Yotsuya kept his silence, so the leader's fury exploded, and he raised his gun threatening, "Speak, or I will kill you now." Suddenly, the game master appeared once more in the form of the little girl, in plain sight of everyone, shocking them all. She tossed a strange glove toward Yotsuya and commanded, "Use this." He put it on quickly, and at once a surge of magical energy burst forth, freezing time itself for a moment. Yotsuya seized the chance, striking the gang leader relentlessly until he crashed to the ground bleeding heavily from the assault. Keita stood rooted in disbelief, unable to comprehend what was unfolding before his eyes. For how could real magic exist in the real world? In that instant, he realized the moment that would forever change his fate had already begun. At that very moment, the police arrived, so Yotsuya turned quickly toward Keita and shouted, "Take your brother and run at once." The boy stared at him in shock and asked, "Who are you really?" But Yotsuya gave no answer and simply walked away. Behind them, the gang leader regained consciousness, snatched up his gun, yet Keita rushed forward, struck the weapon from his hand and cried, "Shame on you for shooting at the one who saved me from behind." The leader's rage boiled over as he roared, "Are you defying me, boy? You know well what will happen to you if you disobey me. Your life itself belongs to me." But Keita's fury exploded, so he kicked him hard in the face, shouting, "You could not even defeat a mere child, and yet you dare to command me." Then he grabbed Shuja's hand and sprinted away, fleeing from the police, leaving everyone stunned at what had just unfolded. Meanwhile, Yotsuya stood facing the game master and said, "The mission is complete. Now let me return." She looked at him and replied, "Before you go, I want to ask you something. You just saved another human from death, so what drove you to risk your life and do that?" He answered calmly, "I did it for my own sake, because I also want new players to join the game and complete the missions with us. The truth is I have begun to enjoy this, and now I feel the urge to see the very end." A strange expression of passion and madness spread across his face as he continued, "I have great curiosity to know how this game will conclude, and I feel that I am already capable of controlling the city where I live, perhaps even controlling the entire world in the future. That is why we must return and continue the missions until the very end." At the same time, the hidden truth was revealed, for Keita had been entangled with the gang leader after being threatened to kill the drug dealer, since his mother and his brother Shuja were heavily indebted to him, and they had no choice but to obey or see their mother murdered. Yet Yotsuya's timely intervention saved them from committing the crime and freed them from the gang leader's grasp. At that moment, the girls were sitting together in a restaurant laughing with great cheer, and suddenly a police car stopped nearby to arrest a criminal and foil yet another crime. Yuka smiled playfully and said, "Surely this must be a new mission for you, Yotsuya." At the same time, the boy was still standing with the game master, recounting everything that had happened and the people he had saved. Meanwhile, Hakozaki was at school, hearing the sound of police sirens in the distance, and she wondered silently, when will the next mission begin? Yotsuya then stood before the game master as she asked him sharply, "Who do you think you are?" He raised his hand and watched the magical energy flare within it as he answered, "I am nothing but an ordinary boy, merely a child deluded by illusions of grandeur, and I finally realized that I was mistaken. Yet even so, I am convinced that what I did was right, because the entire world around me is what is wrong. Yes, I know well that what I feel is nothing but a madness of grandeur, but what harm is there if this madness turns out to be reality?" He then unleashed a surge of overwhelming power from his hand and declared, "I fight with the justice I believe in, and I have lived my entire life by this principle. I will continue to live by it, and I will never rest until I see your end as well, O Game Master." And thus the events of this season come to a close, yet the story itself remains far from complete. For more thrilling and fiery seasons still await, so do not forget to subscribe and press the like button so you never miss what comes next. And with that, farewell. But the unexpected happened when a strange girl appeared before him out of nowhere and said, "How are you, Yotsuya?" He stumbled back and asked in shock, "Who are you, and why are you here?" She answered, "You should have replied to my message. Why did you delete it?" At that moment he realized she was the game master herself standing in their world, and he asked in disbelief, "Are you truly the game master? How did you come to our world, and how did you turn into a young girl?" She replied coldly, "You have no right to ask me anything." They sat together and she said, "Answer the question you ignored. What do you feel now after what you have done?" He lowered his head and answered with honesty, "I feel deep regret. I know what I did was a grave mistake, but I believed I was fighting a character in a game, and I only did it because I wanted to save an entire city from destruction and war." She listened in silence, then said, "Forget this matter for now, but do not think you can abandon the game, for you cannot escape. You must continue every mission, or else you will all die in your real world." Then she added, "It is time I tell you about the new person who will join you." He asked with worry, "Who is it?" She smiled faintly and said, "You will know everything in due time." Then she handed him a cap and ordered, "Wear it now." He stared at her in shock, feeling the weight of danger pressing down on him more than ever. In another part of the city, right in front of a Chinese restaurant, a gang of masked thieves and thugs were gathering, with their leader standing tall and ordering them to prepare for their mission. Inside the restaurant, Yotsuya sat with the game master, tense and uneasy. So he asked her, "Why did you bring me here?" The girl who embodied the game master smiled and answered, "The man you see before you is a well-known drug dealer, and the new player I want you to recruit into your group will enter now. Your task will be to prevent what is about to happen. Be ready. They will enter in 3, 2, 1. At that exact moment, the restaurant door burst open, and the thugs rushed inside charging at the drug dealer. But Yotsuya stretched his leg and tripped one of them to the ground, then shouted at the rest, "What you are doing is a terrible mistake." One of them struck him on the leg with a club, thinking he could overpower him. Yet Yotsuya's anger flared, so he grabbed them one by one, smashing through their ranks until none of them could stand against him. During the fight, he heard someone calling out the name Shuja, and instantly realized that he was facing the very target the game master had mentioned. The boy attacked again, but Yotsuya blocked him with ease, ripped the mask from his face, and declared firmly, "Take your brother and leave right now before the police arrive and arrest you." Yet Keita refused and shouted, "I will not leave until I finish this drug dealer." Yotsuya roared, "Stop it. What you are doing is wrong. Run away before you destroy yourself." At that very moment, the gang leader, enraged by the failure of his plan, stormed into the restaurant and bellowed, "Stop at once." He turned sharply toward Yotsuya and demanded, "Who are you, you brat? Who sent you? Are you working with the rival gang?" Yotsuya kept his silence, so the leader's fury exploded, and he raised his gun threatening, "Speak, or I will kill you now." Suddenly, the game master appeared once more in the form of the little girl, in plain sight of everyone, shocking them all. She tossed a strange glove toward Yotsuya and commanded, "Use this." He put it on quickly, and at once a surge of magical energy burst forth, freezing time itself for a moment. Yotsuya seized the chance, striking the gang leader relentlessly until he crashed to the ground bleeding heavily from the assault. Keita stood rooted in disbelief, unable to comprehend what was unfolding before his eyes. For how could real magic exist in the real world? In that instant, he realized the moment that would forever change his fate had already begun. At that very moment, the police arrived, so Yotsuya turned quickly toward Keita and shouted, "Take your brother and run at once." The boy stared at him in shock and asked, "Who are you really?" But Yotsuya gave no answer and simply walked away. Behind them, the gang leader regained consciousness, snatched up his gun, yet Keita rushed forward, struck the weapon from his hand and cried, "Shame on you for shooting at the one who saved me from behind." The leader's rage boiled over as he roared, "Are you defying me, boy? You know well what will happen to you if you disobey me. Your life itself belongs to me." But Keita's fury exploded, so he kicked him hard in the face, shouting, "You could not even defeat a mere child, and yet you dare to command me." Then he grabbed Shuja's hand and sprinted away, fleeing from the police, leaving everyone stunned at what had just unfolded. Meanwhile, Yotsuya stood facing the game master and said, "The mission is complete. Now let me return." She looked at him and replied, "Before you go, I want to ask you something. You just saved another human from death, so what drove you to risk your life and do that?" He answered calmly, "I did it for my own sake, because I also want new players to join the game and complete the missions with us. The truth is I have begun to enjoy this, and now I feel the urge to see the very end." A strange expression of passion and madness spread across his face as he continued, "I have great curiosity to know how this game will conclude, and I feel that I am already capable of controlling the city where I live, perhaps even controlling the entire world in the future. That is why we must return and continue the missions until the very end." At the same time, the hidden truth was revealed, for Keita had been entangled with the gang leader after being threatened to kill the drug dealer, since his mother and his brother Shuja were heavily indebted to him, and they had no choice but to obey or see their mother murdered. Yet Yotsuya's timely intervention saved them from committing the crime and freed them from the gang leader's grasp. At that moment, the girls were sitting together in a restaurant laughing with great cheer, and suddenly a police car stopped nearby to arrest a criminal and foil yet another crime. Yuka smiled playfully and said, "Surely this must be a new mission for you, Yotsuya." At the same time, the boy was still standing with the game master, recounting everything that had happened and the people he had saved. Meanwhile, Hakozaki was at school, hearing the sound of police sirens in the distance, and she wondered silently, when will the next mission begin? Yotsuya then stood before the game master as she asked him sharply, "Who do you think you are?" He raised his hand and watched the magical energy flare within it as he answered, "I am nothing but an ordinary boy, merely a child deluded by illusions of grandeur, and I finally realized that I was mistaken. Yet even so, I am convinced that what I did was right, because the entire world around me is what is wrong. Yes, I know well that what I feel is nothing but a madness of grandeur, but what harm is there if this madness turns out to be reality?" He then unleashed a surge of overwhelming power from his hand and declared, "I fight with the justice I believe in, and I have lived my entire life by this principle. I will continue to live by it, and I will never rest until I see your end as well, O Game Master." And thus the events of this season come to a close, yet the story itself remains far from complete. For more thrilling and fiery seasons still await, so do not forget to subscribe and press the like button so you never miss what comes next. And with that, farewell.